Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair, barakallahu feek. Today we're going to be talking about a few things, and we're going to start off by talking about Hassan Sabbah and the Hashashin. Now, the Hashashin were a group of Muslims which obviously didn't follow Islam correctly, as they would commit suicide also, as some of the terrorists that we see today do. Which is perhaps where the culture comes from. But Hassan Sabbah was a king, a ruler from Alamut, and he had the Hashashin, and the Hashashin were basically assassins. That's where the word assassin comes from. It's from Hashashin. The assassins, they basically would go as far as, for example, send somebody over to a town. An assassin, send an assassin to a town to eliminate a target. However, it wouldn't be him, that particular assassin, that would assassinate the target. It would be his child's child. So 3 or 2 generations down the line, the murder would be carried out. And sometimes, perhaps even without training for the assassination, as most of the Hashashin would do. This particular assassin would just be able to do the minimum to fulfill the task, to perform the task, and he would then obviously assassinate his target, and things would go from there. Now, the Hashashin were basically the reason, or Hassan Sabbah were the reason why Islam collapsed the last time. So if you remember my previous video, we talked about the wars, the Great Wars, the World War I and World War II, and how the connection between the Muslims and the Germans was what brought the downfall to the Khalifa, and why today we don't have a Khalifa. Well, in the past it was similar. It was also a shady situation where what happened was that the Mongols from Asia, they sent, which were, by the way, a very, very fearsome army. They were very, very strong. They sent an emissary to Alamut, to Hassan Sabbah, and Hassan Sabbah had the clever idea of assassinating this emissary, of killing the emissary. Obviously, when you kill the messenger, you're asking for a war, and so it was. There was a war. The Mongols came down and destroyed Baghdad, the center of knowledge, and destroyed Alamut, and just basically hurled Islam back into archaic ages. It's archaic ages, if you understand what I mean, because obviously it's quite recent Islam, comparatively. So it just goes to show that every time that Muslims fall out of Islam, so i.e. perform actions which are immoral or wrong, it generally always ends up with catastrophic results, and i.e. destruction of the empire. Which is why it's important that we stay upon the way of Islam and stay upon the way of Allah. Nextly, I would like to talk about the splitting of Tawheed, which is where the root of the cause, really, the root of the problem is the bidah, the invention. When people invent stuff, they tend to mislead other people. And so therefore, when they mislead these people, then these people obviously are going to have different opinions and carry out different actions that are not necessary and are not called upon, and that ultimately result in destruction and mayhem. So, for example, one of the examples I have of this bidah that is really, really famous is the splitting of Tawheed. Ibn Taymiyyah, as some of you may well know, split Tawheed into 3, Rububiyyah and whatever else. I don't pay too much attention to it because it's bidah. I try not to stick to remembering it and knowing it. so as to not cloud my mind with this idiotic nonsense. So if you imagine Tawheed is the oneness of Allah, they tend to split it into three, so the attributes of Allah, the names of Allah, and all this nonsense that I don't quite understand. But if you do some research online, you will find all of it, and I wouldn't even advise you do that, just so that you don't cloud your mind. But that is what people are going around saying, that Tawheed ought to be split into three to be easier to teach, when Tawheed is obviously the oneness of Allah and cannot be split into three, and was not split into three at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Sahaba and etc. So that is the root cause of the problem, where you begin to create bidah, and this bidah grows, and people begin to think that they can find niches and loopholes to make things easier and quicker for them to prosper quickly. And obviously it never turns out correctly, because in the way of Allah is hardship and perseverance and